The three women stood inside Eli's barn as if it belonged to them. They didn't ask permission, nor did they offer an explanation. They simply waited. Eli had never laid eyes on them before, yet somehow they knew exactly where to find the spare key he kept hidden beneath the loose floorboard. They knew his name. They knew he lived alone. The eldest carried a leather pouch that clinked with coins, more money than Eli had seen in years. When he reached for it, she drew it back with a sly smile, like it was part of a game only she understood. "The chief said you'd try to refuse," she told him. Her English flawless, though her accent carried something strange, something that didn't belong to any tribe from these lands. That was impossible. The nearest tribal territory was 3 days' ride north, and no chief had ever set foot here, much less concerned himself with a rancher drowning in debt. Then the youngest sister spoke. "He said you'd ask about the scar." Eli's hand went instinctively to his shoulder, to the hidden wound beneath his shirt. Only 3 people had ever known about it: his late father, the doctor who'd long since moved east, and the medicine man who had found him bleeding in the desert 15 years ago. The man's face was a blur now, but his words still haunted Eli. "One day I will send my daughters to collect what you owe." These women weren't strangers. They were here because of a promise Eli had made in the delirium of youth, half dead and desperate. But the medicine man had spoken of daughters. Not 3 women so different they looked as though they came from separate tribes, with accents and clothes that did not match. And if this was a debt, why did the pouch feel more like payment? The desert came flooding back in fragments, scorching heat, blood soaking his shirt, the weathered hands of an old healer binding his wound, whispering of honor and debts that must be paid. "You promised him 3 horses," the eldest said, studying Eli's face. "But you had none. So he told you one day you would give him something far more valuable." The middle sister stepped forward, and only then did Eli realize their sheer presence. They weren't ordinary women. Each stood nearly as tall as him, shoulders broad, arms strong from labor, their very presence filling the barn like ancient oaks growing too close together. "I am Nora," the eldest continued firmly. "This is Cora, and that's Will." Her sisters nodded in silence. "Our father sent us because his time runs short. The white man's sickness has taken most of our people. Only we remain of his blood." Eli's mouth went dry. "Your father, the medicine man, Chief Ayana," Nora corrected. "He became chief when the old one passed last winter. And yes, he remembers a foolish boy who promised whatever was needed in return for his life." 15 years of forgotten words and buried gratitude pressed down on Eli's chest. He had been dying. People say reckless things when they're dying. "I don't understand," he said, though part of him already did. "Why you? Why here? Why now?" Willa laughed, sharp and bitter. "Because the soldiers come for our land next month. Because only a white man's name can shield us. Because you owe a debt." Cora finally spoke, her voice gentler than her sister's. "Father is dying. His last wish is to see us safe. A marriage to a landowner gives us standing, a chance." Eli's eyes drifted over his failing ranch, the sagging roof, the hollow corral, the fields he could barely afford to plant. "Safe here?" he muttered. "I'm 3 months behind on my mortgage. The bank's already coming." Without hesitation, Nora reached into her pouch and drew out a fistful of gold coins. They glimmered in the afternoon light pouring through the barn door. "Father's savings," she said simply. "The last of what our people had. It's yours if you honor your word." Eli's throat tightened. Enough to pay the mortgage. Enough to fix the roof, buy cattle, everything he had dreamed of. But at what cost? 3 wives, towering women from a dying tribe, a debt he could barely remember making. "I need time," he managed. "Time is what we don't have," Nora cut in. "The soldiers march at dawn. Father expects an answer before sunset." Her dark gaze locked on him, unflinching. "He also told us to remind you of the other promise." Eli's stomach dropped. The other promise. His hands trembled as the memory clawed its way back, his fevered, dying words to the medicine man. "If ever I break my word, may my bloodline end with me." He had thought it meaningless, the delirious rambling of a boy desperate to survive. But now, standing before 3 women who could easily break him in half, it felt like a noose tightening around his throat. "He remembers," Willa said softly, reading the fear on his face. She stepped closer. Eli caught the scent of leather and wood smoke clinging to her clothes. "Good, that makes this easier." Cora pulled a rolled parchment from her belt. She spread it across a hay bale, A marriage contract written in English, signed and witnessed by the territorial judge in Prescott. All proper, all legal. 3 wives, 1 husband, Eli stared. The ink was sharp, the handwriting official. Someone had prepared this long before today. How did you convince a judge to write this? Gold buys many things, Nora answered simply, including silence. Before Eli could speak, the barn door creaked. All 4 turned. A tall figure stood in the doorway, framed by the sinking sun, lean, weathered, clad in a mixture of frontier clothes and tribal dress. Eli's breath caught. Chief Ayanna. Older now, grayer, thinner in the way sickness hollows a man from within, but still the same eyes. Still the same presence. My daughters have explained? The chief asked in weary English, stepping into the barn. His voice carried the weight of exhaustion. They've explained plenty, Eli replied, summoning courage. But I never agreed to marry anyone. I was 19. I was dying. People say things when they're dying. The chief nodded slowly. Yes, they do. I said many things when I was dying last month. But the white doctor in Prescott bought me time. Medicine gave me weeks, not years. He coughed, a wet, ragged sound, and Eli saw flecks of blood at his lips. Time enough to keep my end of the bargain. What bargain? Eli demanded. I saved your life, the chief rasped. You swore to give me whatever I needed. Now I need my daughters to survive. His eyes hardened. The cavalry burned 4 villages last month. Ours will be next. But wives of a white rancher, they will be spared. Willa moved between them, her jaw set. He doesn't want us, Father. Look at him. He's afraid. I'm not afraid. Eli snapped, pride flaring. I'm practical. I can barely feed myself, let alone 3 giant women? Cora finished for him, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. Say it. We've heard worse. The chief doubled over in another coughing fit. This time when he lifted his head, blood stained his chin. The sickness moves fast now. I have days, not weeks. Decide, Eli Thompson. Honor your word or face the consequence of breaking it. What consequences? Eli asked, voice thin. Nora's hand slipped beneath her jacket, deliberate and slow. Father isn't the only one who remembers promises, she said. The whole tribe remembers what you owe. Outside, the sound Eli had feared all day reached him. Hoofbeats hard and fast, many of them. Who's that? He whispered. The chief smiled without humor. My nephews, coming to hear your answer. A cloud of dust birthed 4 riders. Their horses were slick with sweat. The men looked like boys who'd been made into warriors too soon. They dismounted with grim, practiced efficiency, fingers never far from the knives at their belts. The leader, broad-shouldered, a jagged scar cutting his cheek, strode into the barn. Uncle, he said in English, then shifted into a rapid tongue Eli couldn't follow. Chief Ayanna replied sharply. Eli felt the tension thrumming beneath the chief's words. Speak English, Joseph, Nora ordered. Mr. Thompson deserves to know what concerns his future. Joseph's dark eyes fixed on Eli with naked hostility. Future, he spat. This coward has no future. He kicked a clod of dirt. The cavalry found our camp 2 hours ago. They're asking about 3 missing women. He spat again. Women who should be helping us prepare for war, not hiding behind a white man's name. War? Eli's voice broke. What war? The war that started when they burned Wickham Village, Willa said, her hand drifting to a hunting knife. 43 dead, children among them. Her words dropped like stones. The barn shrank around that number. The chief's breathing rattled like old bellows. They'll come for us next, Joseph said, eyes cold. They're tracking footprints. When they find these women, he gestured at the sisters, they'll kill every one of us. Cora stepped forward, steady despite the fear Eli could read in her face. Not if we're legally married, she said. Not if we're protected under the white man's law. Joseph barked a bitter laugh. Their law? The same law that says we can't own land, that we're not citizens, that they can kill us for sport? Chief Ayanna lifted a hand. The argument stilled. Enough. He turned to Eli, and in the dim light his face looked carved from sorrow. The choice is simple. Marry my daughters and give them protection, or watch them die when the soldiers arrive. Eli's mouth felt like dry earth. When will they get here? He asked. Before dawn, Joseph said. Maybe sooner if they push their horses. Eli looked at the 3 women again, at the exhaustion around their eyes, the way they carried a burden that bent their shoulders even as they stood tall. These were not conquerors. They were refugees asking for a shelter built in someone else's name. If I say yes, he asked slowly, what happens to you and your nephews? The chief managed a sad smile. We vanish into the mountains. Live like ghosts until the anger dies down. He coughed. Darker drops flecked his lips.
If I live that long? If you say no, Nora said plainly, then we do not run.
Then we die here together. A low rumble rolled across the prairie. The sky had been clear all afternoon. This was not thunder. Joseph's hand slid to his knife. That's horses, he said. A lot of them. Chief Ayanna closed his eyes. They're early, he whispered. The ground trembled as the sound grew. 20 horses, maybe more, bearing a choice that had to be made before night fell. Hide in the root cellar, Eli said quickly. All of you. I'll tell them I haven't seen anyone. Joseph barked a harsh laugh. You think they'll just take your word? They'll search every board, every hole. He drew his knife. Better to die fighting. Put that away, Nora snapped. Violence will only prove their point. She turned to Eli, and for the first time he saw vulnerability in her eyes. But Joseph's right about one thing. They won't believe you. Cora slipped to the barn window, pressing her eye to a crack in the boards. 12 soldiers, she whispered, led by a captain. Yellow stripes on his sleeve. She looked back at Eli. Do you know him? Eli's stomach dropped. Captain Morrison. He's been here before. What for? Willa demanded. My mortgage, Eli said bitterly. The bank hired him to lean on me, pressure me to sell. He raked his hands through his hair. He knows I'm desperate. If he finds you here, he'll think you're hiding for money. Which makes you guilty too. Nora finished flatly. The hoofbeats were close now. Close enough to hear the clink of tack and the call of voices. Chief Ayanna gripped a post and forced himself upright. There's something else you need to know, he rasped. Not now, Joseph hissed. Uncle, this isn't the time, it's exactly the time. The chief's fever-bright eyes locked on Eli. My daughters aren't just refugees. They're wanted. Eli's blood iced. Wanted for what? Willa stepped forward, chin high. We killed the men who burned our village. The word struck Eli like a blow. He stared at them. No longer just exhausted women, but fugitives carrying blood on their hands. How many? He whispered. 6, Cora said evenly. They came to our camp drunk. They set fire to the sacred lodge with elders inside. Her hands clenched into fists, so we tracked them back and cut their throats while they slept. Jesus Christ, Eli breathed. They were murderers, Nora said sharply. But we're the ones with bounties. Boots hit the ground outside. Morrison's voice rang out cold and commanding. Thompson, come out here. Chief Ayanna seized Eli's arm with surprising strength. Now you know the truth. Marry them and you harbor killers, but the law shields a husband from testifying against his wives. Refuse and you're still guilty of hiding them. His eyes burned. Choose. Thompson. Morrison's voice boomed closer, right outside the barn door. Open up, we need to talk. Eli looked at the 3 sisters. They weren't begging for love or even mercy. They were asking for his name. And in their faces, scarred with grief, hardened by survival, he saw something he'd never had. A reason to be more than a failing rancher waiting to lose everything. The door rattled under a soldier's hand. 1 minute, Morrison barked. Then we're coming in. Eli's gaze fell on the marriage contract spread across the hay bale. His fingers hovered over the official seal, then clenched. I need a pen, he whispered. Nora's eyes widened. Cora pulled a stub of pencil from her belt and pressed it into his palm. Eli scrawled his name across the line, then grabbed Nora's hand and guided her to sign. Quickly, he hissed at Cora and Willa. They signed in hurried strokes. Eli turned to Joseph and the nephews. You're my ranch hands. Been working here all summer. Keep your mouths shut and follow my lead. The barn door swung wide. Captain Morrison entered with 3 soldiers at his back. Thin, cold-eyed, his neatly trimmed beard did nothing to soften the cruelty etched into his mouth. Thompson, Morrison drawled, scanning the barn. Interesting company you're keeping. Eli stepped forward, blocking his view of the chief slumped against the wall, pale as death. Captain, what brings you out here so late? We're tracking dangerous fugitives, Morrison said, his hand resting on his pistol. 3 native women who murdered 6 white men. Witnesses saw them riding this way. Haven't seen any women, Eli lied, his voice steady. Just hired some new hands for the harvest. Morrison's eyes slid to Nora. He took in her broad shoulders, her frame, the unmistakable shape of a woman beneath plain clothes. His lip curled. That's a mighty big ranch hand you've got there, Thompson. Sweat trickled down Eli's temple. He forced himself to meet Morrison's gaze. This is my wife, Nora Thompson. We were married this afternoon. The silence stretched tight as wire. Morrison's eyes narrowed, studying Nora's face for the slightest crack. Morrison's gaze slid from Nora to Cora, then to Willa. Your wife's got sisters, does she? My other wives, Eli said, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. Cora and Willa Thompson. All legal and proper. One of the soldiers snorted. 3 wives? What kind of man? The kind who follows territorial law, Eli cut in, voice firm. Polygamy's legal here with proper documentation. He held up the marriage certificate, its seal catching the lantern light. Witnessed in Prescott yesterday. Morrison snatched the document and read it closely. His jaw tightened as he scanned the precise handwriting, the judge's signature, the territorial seals. All of it legitimate. Convenient timing, he said finally. Marrying 3 native women the very day we hunt 3 native killers. My wives are from the Tohono O'odham, Eli lied smoothly. Farmers from the south. Peaceful people. Never been anywhere near Wickham. Nora stepped forward then, managing to soften her imposing presence, folding herself smaller. Captain, sir, she said in perfect English, touched with a faint lilt. We've been traveling weeks to reach my husband's ranch. We know nothing of these troubles. Morrison's eyes narrowed. They shifted toward the chief, slumped against the wall. My father-in-law, Eli explained quickly, sick with fever. We're caring for him. Joseph stepped in to steady his uncle, his arm around him with unmistakable devotion. The sickness took many of our people. Father's all we have left. Morrison studied each face, hunting for fear, cracks, guilt. What he saw instead was fatigue and grief wrapped in the quiet dignity of people tending a dying man. Finally, with a grunt, he thrust the marriage certificate back at Eli. If I find out you're lying to me, Thompson, I'll see you hang alongside them. I understand. Captain, Morrison signaled his men. They began to file out, boots striking the packed earth. At the doorway he paused, turning back. I'll be watching this place. Any sign these women aren't what they claim, and I'll return. Then he was gone. The soldiers mounted and rode into the deepening dusk. Only silence remained, heavy and oppressive, thicker than storm clouds massing overhead. Eli nearly collapsed. He looked down at the certificate in his hands, the ink still damp from their names. 3 wives. He had gone from bachelor to polygamist in the span of 5 desperate minutes. Foolish, more like, Eli muttered, though he could not shake the strange fire inside him, the sense of purpose that had taken hold when his pencil touched the page. Morrison's not finished. He'll be back. Joseph eased the chief into a sitting position against the hay bales. Each breath rattled. Visible effort. Uncle needs medicine, Joseph said. There's a doctor in town, Eli began. No doctors, Chief Ayana whispered, his voice like wind over stones. Too dangerous. The sickness will claim me, better stars, it matters little. His fever-bright eyes fixed on Eli. But my daughters are safe now. That is what matters. Willa moved to the barn door, scanning the darkening horizon. They'll come again tomorrow. Maybe with more men. Then we'll be ready, Cora said, though Eli heard the tremor beneath her steady tone. Ready? How? Eli asked. I don't know the first thing about being a husband to 1 woman, let alone 3. Nora surprised him by laughing, a warm, rich sound that seemed to cut the tension. You think we know how to share a husband? This is uncharted ground for us too. The thought lingered in the barn, strange and unsettling, yet oddly grounding. Eli found himself studying them properly for the first time. Nora, the eldest, carried herself with quiet authority. Even when she shrank for Morrison's benefit, dignity radiated from her like iron beneath velvet. Cora, sharp-eyed, calculating, she was the one who thought ahead, who secured papers and planned their survival. Willa, youngest, restless as a caged cougar, dangerous and alive with an untamed fire that made Eli both wary and drawn to her. We'll have to look convincing, Cora said, ever practical. If Morrison comes back and finds us sleeping in a barn like strangers, he'll know something's wrong. Heat rose in Eli's face. The house has only 2 bedrooms. Then we'll make do, Nora replied matter-of-factly. Married people share space. It's what Morrison will expect. Thank you, Nora said softly. Foolish, more like, Eli muttered, though he could not shake the strange fire inside him, the sense of purpose that had taken hold when his pencil touched the page. Morrison's not finished. He'll be back. Joseph eased the chief into a sitting position against the hay bales. Each breath rattled. Visible effort. Uncle needs medicine, Joseph said. There's a doctor in town, Eli began. No doctors, Chief Ayana whispered, his voice like wind over stones. Too dangerous. The sickness will claim me. Bed or stars, it matters little. His fever-bright eyes fixed on Eli. But my daughters are safe now. That is what matters. Willa moved to the barn door, scanning the darkening horizon. They'll come again tomorrow, maybe with more men. Then we'll be ready, Cora said, though Eli heard the tremor beneath her steady tone. Ready? How? Eli asked. I don't know the first thing about being a husband to one woman, let alone three. Nora surprised him by laughing, a warm, rich sound that seemed to cut the tension. You think we know how to share a husband? This is uncharted ground for us, too. The thought lingered in the barn, strange and unsettling, yet oddly grounding. Eli found himself studying them properly for the first time. Nora, the eldest, carried herself with quiet authority. Even when she shrank for Morrison's benefit, dignity radiated from her like iron beneath velvet. Cora, sharp-eyed, calculating. She was the one who thought ahead, who secured papers and planned their survival. Willa, youngest, restless as a caged cougar, dangerous and alive with an untamed fire that made Eli both wary and drawn to her. We'll have to look convincing, Cora said, ever practical. If Morrison comes back and finds us sleeping in a barn like strangers, he'll know something's wrong. Heat rose in Eli's face. The house has only 2 bedrooms. Then we'll make do, Nora replied matter-of-factly. Married people share space. It's what Morrison will expect. Joseph and the nephews gathered their meager belongings. We'll camp in the hills, Joseph said. Close enough to help if needed. Far enough to stay unseen. The chief reached out, his grip startlingly strong for a dying man. He caught Eli's hand, his gaze burning with urgency. Protect them, he rasped. They're all that's left of our bloodline, the chief rasped. All that's left of who we were. I will, Eli promised, and for the first time in years he meant it. As Joseph and the nephews slipped into the darkness, Eli led his new family toward the house. The building seemed to shrink beneath the weight of 3 towering women following behind him. There's something else, Willa said as they stepped onto the porch. Eli's stomach clenched. What now? The bounty on our heads. Willa met his eyes in the lamplight. It's not just from the territorial government. The families of the men we killed, they put up their own reward. $500 each, dead or alive. $1,500, Cora added quietly. Enough to make every bounty hunter from here to California saddle up. As if her words had summoned them, faint hoofbeats drifted across the prairie. Eli doused the lamp and moved to the window. 3 riders, slow and deliberate, silhouettes against the star-pocked sky. Not soldiers, professionals. Bounty hunters, Willa whispered. Nora took position by the back door. Cora slipped to the side window. Without a word, they spread to cover the exits, moving like people who had done this before. How do we play it? Eli asked. The same as before, Nora said firmly. Were your wives married, legal, protected? They won't care about legal, Cora said, her tone grim. $1,500 makes men forget the law. The riders stopped 50 yards from the house. Eli saw them conferring in low voices before one dismounted and approached the front door. The other 2 flanked wide, covering the angles. Professional, a knock came. Polite, almost friendly. Mr. Thompson, a voice called. Sorry to trouble you so late. We're looking for some missing women. Thought you might have seen them. Eli opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain latched. The man on the porch was middle-aged, graying hair. Kind eyes that didn't match the gun at his hip. Name's Fletcher, he said smoothly. We're tracking 3 native women. Big women. Traveled together. You seen anyone like that? Just my wives, Eli said. We married yesterday. Fletcher's smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened. Mind if I meet them? Always like to congratulate newlyweds. Eli's mouth went dry. Refusal would mean suspicion. Of course, he forced out. He unlatched the door and Fletcher stepped inside. The other 2 stayed outside. Close enough to back him, far enough not to be trapped. Nora emerged from the kitchen with a coffee pot, the picture of domestic normalcy. Yet Eli saw Fletcher's eyes narrow as he studied her size, her posture, the way she carried herself. "Ma'am," Fletcher said politely, "congratulations on your marriage." "Thank you," Nora replied, pouring coffee. Fletcher accepted the cup but didn't drink. "Your husband says you were wed yesterday. Where?" "Prescott," Cora answered smoothly as she and Willa stepped in from the bedroom. "Judge Morrison performed it." Fletcher's brows rose at the sight of 3. 3 wives. That's unusual. "Legal in this territory," Eli said quickly. "Oh, I know it's legal." Fletcher set the cup aside, untouched. "It's just that the women I'm after are also 3 sisters. Also unusually large. What are the odds?" Silence. The air stretched taut as wire. Eli felt his wives coil like springs ready to strike. Outside, a horse snorted, restless. "I'll tell you what the odds are," Fletcher continued casually. "Slim, so maybe we take a closer look at your marriage certificate." "It's legal," Eli insisted. "I'm sure it is." Fletcher's hand drifted lazily toward his gun. "But legal don't mean legitimate. In 12 years of hunting, I've learned, when 3 wanted women vanish and 3 wives appear overnight. Well, coincidences make me nervous." Willa stepped forward, knife in hand, her voice low. "Maybe you should leave." Fletcher's friendly mask fell away. His eyes turned cold. "And maybe you should come with me quietly. Dead or alive, the bounty pays the same." That's when the door opened again. Chief Ayanna stepped through, pale as a ghost, shaking, supported by Joseph and another nephew. Death was written across his face, yet in his hand he carried something that stopped Fletcher cold. A silver badge official. Territorial markings gleamed in the lamplight. "Deputy Chief Ayanna," the old man wheezed. "Territorial Marshal's office. These women are under my protection." Fletcher's face drained of color. That's impossible." "Check the records in Prescott," Ayanna rasped, his voice steadier now, fueled by will alone. "I've been undercover for 6 months, tracking the true killers. These women are my operatives." It was a lie, desperate and impossible. But Ayanna told it with such conviction that even Eli nearly believed it. Fletcher studied the badge, his weathered face tight with doubt. "Undercover marshals don't marry their operatives to civilians. They do when it's the only way to preserve cover," Ayanna shot back, each word costing him. "The real killers are white men dressed as natives, trying to start a war between tribes and settlers." The simplicity of it struck like lightning. So audacious it might work. The lie was perfect. Simple, powerful, and just believable enough to give Fletcher a way out. "I'll need to verify this in Prescott," Fletcher said at last. "Of course," Ayanna rasped, nodding. "Marshal Davidson will confirm everything." Fletcher studied the old man, then holstered his gun. At the threshold, he paused, glancing back at Eli. "You're either the luckiest man in the territory, or the unluckiest. Time will tell which." The bounty hunters rode off into the night. Chief Ayanna crumpled into Joseph's arms, the silver badge slipping from his fingers and clattering to the wooden floor. Eli dropped to his knees beside him. "Where did you get that?" Ayanna's lips curved in a faint smile. "Took it off a dead marshal 3 years ago, saved it. For something important." His breathing weakened, each word a battle. "Figured tonight qualified." Within the hour, they watched him slip away, peaceful at last, surrounded by his daughters and nephews. His final words, spoken in his native tongue, broke Nora's composure. Tears streaked her face as she whispered the translation. "He said we should be happy, that we found a good man." Before dawn, Joseph and the others carried their uncle's body into the hills for burial according to tribal ways. When the sun rose, Eli stood on the porch of his small house, 3 women at his side. For the first time they were alone together, husband and wives bound by circumstance and survival. "So," Willa asked, breaking the silence, "what now?" Eli looked at the cramped little house, already too small for the weight of their new lives. "I suppose we figure out how to make this work. The sleeping arrangements alone." Cora began, then flushed, cutting herself off. "We'll manage," Nora said firmly. "We've survived worse than an overcrowded house." And manage they did. In the weeks that followed, the strange household became something more than Eli had ever dared hope. Nora, with her steady hand and sharp mind, took over the ranch's finances, using her father's gold to pay off debts and rebuild the herd. Cora imposed order where chaos had reigned, her careful planning turning failure into routine success, and Willa, fierce and restless, brought laughter back into Eli's life, reminding him how to dream beyond bare survival. The desperate arrangement grew into partnership, respect, and something deeper, not romance. Not yet, but a bond that felt unbreakable. Under Eli's command and 3 capable wives by his side, the transformation was so convincing that Morrison left without a single question. That evening, as the 4 of them sat on the porch watching the sun sink over the prairie, Eli broke the silence. "When your father first said I'd be your husband, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen to me. And now?" Nora asked quietly. When Captain Morrison returned a month later to sniff for cracks, he found a ranch thriving. Eli looked at each of them in turn, the strength in Nora's gaze, the intelligence in Cora's, the fire in Willa's. Women who had saved not just his ranch, but his sense of purpose. "Now," he said softly, "I think it might be the best." As the first stars pricked the velvet sky, Eli Thompson understood what Chief Ayanna had seen in him all those years ago. Not just a foolish boy who owed a debt, but a man capable of honoring it. And in honoring it, he had found something he never expected. A family. A future, a place where he belonged.